We can be friends, bud. Come on. I didn't mean to shoot at you.
We are talking The BOGMAN, also known as Bigfoot Town. And this is directed, co-written and co-starring Mitch Lang. And this is a low-budget Sasquatch movie. What's the story? It takes place in Arkansas and it follows a family who are moving there after they have inherited a kind of some land with some, it's like a farm and stuff on there. So they're going to go in there to start a new life. Husband, wife, 2 kids. And this town where this kind of farm is located is famous for having Sasquatch sightings. And in actual fact, the town has got somewhat of a tourist business because of its association with Sasquatch. And people kind of trying to come and see it and everything like that. And a lot of people feel it's just like a load of old rubbish, but it's just the sort of thing to bring tourists in. They don't really believe it, but there are some that do. So, as the movie progresses, we learn that Sasquatch is indeed real, and this kind of family seems to be pretty close to it. And we get the kind of other people involved, the town sheriff. We even get a group of kind of documentarians who kind of do cryptid shows and things like that. They kind of want to come in and try and capture evidence of this Bigfoot. But this Bigfoot does not take kindly to being disturbed and responds in a violent manner. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's talk about it. So this is a low budget movie. So we have to have expectations in check whilst reviewing a movie like this. What do I think that works in this movie's favour? Now, surprisingly, this isn't like a kind of campy movie. There are maybe a couple of scenes towards the end that maybe go a little bit kind of like comedic and campy, but for the most part, it's played pretty straight, which gives the movie a more of a feeling of stakes that are involved, because people are taking the subject matter somewhat seriously. But it makes it for more of a kind of thrilling movie, if that makes sense, rather than a kind of like a jokey, campy, comedic movie. I actually quite liked our family. I thought they were quite an interesting bunch. They were I kind of quite liked their sort of relationship with one another. There's like a new stepmother involved, and she's trying to kind of bond with the kids, but it's not overplayed with lots of kind of drama where the kids aren't really accepting her and things like that. They kind of get on pretty well. It's just there, and I kind of found it, quite refreshing to a degree, where we have a relatively kind of functional kind of family who are just kind of getting on with it. I also have to say I kind of quite like some of our kind of peripheral characters, like the deputy, like the farmhand, things like this. And we get when we can see first evidence of basically the Bigfoot kills a couple of like hunters, and everyone's kind of talking sort of what should we do about it, etc., etc., trying to figure out what's kind of going on. I've got to say I thought the acting was fair. I actually thought it was pretty good, and people gave some quite sort of down-to-earth kind of roles. Again, considering this is a low-budget movie, I mean, we're not talking Oscar over here, but I believe them in their roles enough to kind of be invested in the kind of the story. And I do think the story is actually, like I say, it's fairly mature. It's a little more kind of sophisticated than I kind of was expecting with a kind of a movie like this. I thought it was going to be kind of a campy, jokey film. It isn't really. It does take the movie's plot kind of quite seriously to a large degree, and I kind of quite enjoyed that. I like the fact that people here are kind of used to the idea of a Bigfoot, but half the people don't really believe it's real, and then we have these sort of characters like, well, I kind of heard the legends, but I just kind of was used to it. Didn't really ever really think about it until they kind of come face to face with it. So I actually kind of quite like that. And I also quite like the way some of the aspects of the Bigfoot are depicted. Now, it's a low-budget, practical sort of costume, But I quite like we have this, the way it's they're depicted communicating with one another. They give up these sort of howls and stuff, which I thought was quite good. And it does seem to be like pretty violent, but at the same time, it's like, had they not been hunting, it probably wouldn't have been a problem. If it hadn't been kind of imposed upon by these human hunters, you know, with this Bigfoot probably would have left well alone. So yes, it is a dangerous creature, but it's not necessarily evil. It's just kind of protecting its territory and things like that. So again, I thought this movie had some degree of sophistication, more so than I was certainly expecting. Now, it does have some fairly fun practical VFX in regards to some of the kills, and there is quite a high body count in this movie. Towards the end of the movie, we get a load of kind of militia types turn up, and they want to go hunting for it, and it ends in a bloody fashion, let me tell you. And there's some fun, albeit low budget, kind of practical effects. You know, the Bigfoot suit itself, it's kind of like a ghillie suit, which has been repurposed into a creature suit. It isn't the best, but it's not the worst I've seen either. And obviously this thing is kind of in the dark most of the time, and there are some sequences where I did think it looked pretty good. Some kind of fun characters, and generally speaking, I think the plot is quite accessible. You know, and it's quite a fun and engaging plot for the most part. What doesn't work, I do feel the movie runs out a little bit of steam in the third act. I would have made this maybe a tad shorter. It's the third act. We have this group of cryptozoology people turn up, and they want to kind of film it, but then they bring this group of like militia types, and I just felt that it kind of ended up slowing down because we have a lot of people kind of sitting around arguing a lot of the time, and that to me I think could have been truncated a little bit. The movie's just, I mean, it's not like it's a really long film, but I think a movie like this benefits from being a shorter, punchier film, because it's not, you know, it's not the greatest production ever made. This is a low-budget movie, and there are some technical elements we'll come on to in a minute. And I think it leaves a better taste in the mouth had you had a little bit more of a punchier film, where I feel the movie does end up kind of dragging, even though most of the action is in the third act of the movie. That third act seems a little bit kind of like stretched out than I think it could have been, and it could have ultimately been a little bit more of a sort of a shorter, you know, kind of action sequences, and that whole segment could have been cut down to make it a little bit more impactful. As I've mentioned, there are technical elements here. One of the decisions the director has made, or the producers and stuff, is to give it this kind of filter in some sequences that gives it this kind of grain, or there's like tape burning out and things like that, but it's not like it's taking place in like the 70s or something. You know, it's clearly taking place in modern America because people are using smartphones and things, so it doesn't really kind of make sense why it has this kind of grainy feel to it. I think when you're using those kind of filters, you know, it kind of has to be set in the time period where that would have been applicable, and it isn't. So as such, it comes across like, why is there filters on here? And it kind of ends up being a little distracting, and it's not even all the time, it's just some of the time. So I wouldn't have done that. There are some rough edits in this movie as well. There's some of the kind of the transitions from one scene to another are quite, not all the time, but there are some edits here where it's a little bit poorly handled. And there's just things like sometimes the camera placement isn't the best. There seems to be a lot of like dead space and things like that. And so there are some technical elements here, I feel. Obviously, again, it's a lower budget movie. It's probably kind of like not professionally kind of made in that aspect. So I think that does kind of show. I think the movie's storyline is fine, but as I say, there are elements here that drags out. But again, it's nothing new either. At the same time, it's kind of pretty much what you're going to expect. And then the kind of the tone of the movie, for the most part, is played straight, but there are some elements in the third act, again, it's particularly looking at the last shot of the movie, that really ends up being somewhat kind of very different feeling to a large degree. And it's kind of like, well, that doesn't really fit with the kind of the rest of the film. So again, there's decisions made here that I feel aren't the best. And yes, again, the Bigfoot suit, I think, is okay if you don't mind B movies. If you're aware you're watching a kind of a low budget movie, I think you can kind of enjoy this movie for the kind of the low budget and the kind of the cheaper kind of presentation that it has. But yes, I mean, there are times where you can kind of see straps and things on the costume, and they don't make a huge attempt to kind of really hide that. Overall, I think it's actually a fine movie. If you like low-budget B movies, you like Bigfoot movies, I have certainly seen worse attempts here. I wouldn't say it exceeds in any sort of meaningful way, but I think the movie is kind of quite fun. I think it does have some kind of enjoyable characters, and the storyline is serviceable. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's an enjoyable movie. Apparently there are kind of going to be more cryptid style movies that follow on from this, but this one itself, as I said, it's somewhat of a kind of an average low budget movie, but certainly not bad. Worth a watch. It's free on YouTube currently. Let me know what your thoughts are after you've seen it. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.